She called the cops on a black veteran, then froze when the officer walked in. The bell above the diner door jingled sharply as Harold stepped inside. The familiar scent of fried bacon and fresh coffee filled the air. The place had a classic look, checkered floors, worn-out booths, and a faded counter lined with bar stools. It was the kind of spot where regulars had their names woven into the rhythm of the morning rush. Harold adjusted his army cap, the embroidered golden eagle glinting slightly under the fluorescent lights. His knees ached from the long walk from the VA hospital, but he was used to the pain. At 76, he carried a history that most wouldn't understand just by looking at him. Spotting an empty booth by the window, he made his way over, setting his cane against the side. Outside, the sun hung low, casting shadows across the street. Across from him, an old gas station's peeling paint reflected in the morning light. From behind the counter, Melanie, a young waitress, watched him closely. Her grip on the coffee pot tightened as she took in his dark skin, his military hat, the slow, steady way he moved. A flicker of disapproval crossed her face before she walked over. "Can I help you?" Her tone was clipped, impatient. Harold nodded politely. "I'll take a coffee, black, and the breakfast special if you've got it." She didn't write anything down. Instead, she crossed her arms, shifting her weight. "We're full." Harold glanced around. A couple at the far end was finishing their meal. Two booths sat completely empty. There were open spots at the counter. "Doesn't seem too full to me," he said evenly. She let out a sharp breath. "We're not serving right now." His fingers drummed lightly against the table. He'd seen this before, years ago in places where he wasn't welcome. Back then, signs had spelled it out. Now it was hidden behind fake smiles and flimsy excuses. He met her gaze, steady. "I served this country. I earned the right to sit here and have a meal." Her expression hardened. "I don't make the rules." The diner had quieted. A few heads turned, conversations pausing just long enough to pick up the tension in the air. An older man near the counter furrowed his brow but said nothing. Harold had spent his life choosing his battles, but he was too old to let people like this push him aside. "Wait!" Melanie's patience snapped. She turned and strode toward the phone near the register, picking it up. She dialed with no hesitation. "Yeah, I need an officer at Miller's Diner," she said sharply. "There's a man here causing a disturbance. He won't leave." Harold didn't move. He just watched her, the weight of history pressing against him once again, but something told him this time would be different. A slow hush settled over the diner as the sound of approaching sirens cut through the morning air. The bell above the door rattled violently as two officers stepped inside, their hands hovering near their belts, scanning the room. Harold remained seated, his posture unchanged. He'd been in far more dangerous situations than this. He knew better than to move too fast. Melanie straightened, her voice suddenly laced with rehearsed innocence. "Officers, that's him." She jabbed a finger at Harold. "He refused to leave. He's making people uncomfortable." One of the officers, a tall man with a square jaw, stepped forward, his stance rigid. But as he got closer, something in his face changed. His jaw loosened, his brows furrowed, as if he'd just seen a ghost. He stopped mid-step. "Sergeant Daniels?" His voice was quiet but heavy. Harold finally looked up, locking eyes with the officer. A pause stretched between them, then recognition flickered in Harold's expression. "Officer Caldwell," Harold said, his voice steady. "Didn't expect to see you here." Melanie's confidence cracked. "Wait, you know him?" Caldwell ignored her. His hands moved away from his belt,
his posture softening. Turning to his younger partner, he shook his head slightly. Stand down. The younger officer hesitated before stepping back. Caldwell let out a breath. Sergeant Daniels saved my life in Fallujah. Pulled me out after my Humvee got hit by an IED. The diner went dead silent. Melanie's face drained of color. That can't be right, she stammered. He was being aggressive. Caldwell's eyes snapped to her, sharp and cold. That man, aggressive? He let out a humorless chuckle. You sure about that, ma'am? She shrank slightly, glancing around for support, but the room had turned against her. The older man at the counter leaned back, arms crossed. Yeah, honey, I think you just got caught in a damn lie. A flush crept up Melanie's neck. Her fingers twitched at her sides. Caldwell turned to the manager, a stocky man with a tight apron. This how you run things here?
The manager, who'd been silent until now, shifted uncomfortably. He glanced at Melanie, who looked back at him with pleading eyes. But there was no saving this. Melanie, the manager said, his voice firm, take off your apron. What? You heard me. Now, we don't do this here. Her lips trembled. I was just doing what I thought was right. The older man at the counter scoffed. Nah, girl. You were doing what you thought you could get away with. Her chest rose and fell too fast. Her hands clenched into fists. This isn't fair. I didn't mean anything by it. Harold tilted his head. You called the cops on me, he said, voice steady, for sitting down. Melanie's lips quivered, but she said nothing. The manager exhaled through his nose. You're done here. Get your things and go. For a moment, she looked like she might argue, but then her shoulders slumped. She pulled off her apron, tossed it on the counter, and walked out without another word. The door shut behind her. But her absence didn't erase what had just happened. If anything, it made it clearer. The older man at the counter shook his head. Damn shame, he muttered. A man serves his country, comes home, and this is the thanks he gets? A murmur of agreement rippled through the diner. The manager, clearing his throat, turned to Harold. Sir, I'd like to cover your meal, on the house, and I want to personally apologize. Harold studied him for a moment, then shook his head. I didn't come here for a free meal. Reaching into his wallet, he pulled out a 20 and set it on the table. Just make sure this doesn't happen again. The manager nodded, his face tight with shame. Harold stood, gripping his cane as he walked toward the door. The diner remained silent, not in ignorance, but in realization. The bell jingled as he stepped outside, the sun casting long shadows across the pavement. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the Story Hub and press the bell icon so you never miss an update.